Hello again to another scripting video round about the Identity Manager. In this specific video, I like to step forward in our lecture, and after we saw how we can address objects and how we can read data out of the database, I like to show you how we can update data and how we can modify our objects. For that, please follow me to the screen and have fun with that video.
Especially beginners often ask why they have to learn the API or make it sense to learn the API, especially if I want to work with a standard and I don't want to customize anything. Yeah, the answer is yes, of course, it makes sense. The reason for is that identity management, it's a complex business, and even if you have the best and the most rich out-of-the-box functionality, it will not enable you to live completely without configuration or customization. And from an API perspective, the question may be where I can find the Visual Basic.NET Code stuff that needs the One Identity Manager API knowledge. And to show you where scripts are used, I'm a designer, you can see here designer, and I want to go with you through many of the common places where you can find VB.NET Code. I'm starting here in designer in the main place where you can find VB.NET Code, and which is easy to find, especially because there's a script library, and if you look into that script library, you will see a lot of scripts. All of them are VB.NET Code. That means the script library itself contains a lot of code. Here it is. In the same way then the custom scripts comes out of the box, you can add more scripts to the database and then you will find them in custom scripts. Here we are. Custom scripts are self-made. That means they are manually developed and they could be modified. You can see that here. If I, for example, open this specific window, then I can start to insert code into it or to change something. One other question could be, there are many of these windows, code fields and whatever in Designer. Some of them are SQL, some of them are Visual Basic.NET. What the hell is the hint that helps me to identify which code I have to input? And even if you don't know it, the control knows it, especially because the control have to syntax highlight something, and that works only if the right syntax is behind. And to give you a hint what's to enter here, you can look at the left lower corner. Here we are, and on the left lower corner there is a small VB that says, in this window you should enter VB code. In difference to some other windows where you can see a small sequel which says, in this window, you should better enter SQL code. If you enter something other else, you will easily figure out there is a syntax error and that at the end will tell you what's to enter. Last but not least, for the scripts on the right upper, there is a locked checkbox, and that locked checkbox allows to disable scripts. If this happens, that means if the box is checked, then this script will not be compiled and will not be available in the One Identity Manager. And this is the next thing. If you just change some code wherever you like it, for example, I'm adding a line of text into that script, and I commit that script to the database, which means I store the data in the database. Then the following happens. Seconds after I made that message, on the right lower, there will be an icon that says this database needs now to be compiled. And that happens in every of our tools. Yeah, for example, if I sign in newly in the manager, then you can see the hint. Here it is. And the hint goes hand in hand with an icon, which is here, and this icon says, please compile the database because at present the business logic, it's not actual. And to do so, what you have to do, for example, from Designer, you can just start the database compiler. Please ensure that every time you change somewhere VB.NET Code, that after you hit commit to database, you compile your database to be sure that your new code is as well considered. Another thing is to know if that hint, run the compiler, happens. That means if you see that hint here on the right lower, then automatically some things will go on hold. One of them, for example, are some calculation jobs in the DB queue, which means our DB queue processor will stop working and waits that the complete compilation of VB.NET Code happens. The reason for that is pretty easy. Very often out of these DB queue processor jobs, gets data change actions calculated, and these data modification actions then will lead to process generation. Process generation depends on VB.NET code, and it makes no sense to create a lot of old data change and data modification actions based on old business logic, which is not actual anymore. By the way, you can as well turn off this behavior, but my clear recommendation is don't touch it. Back to the scripts. Here are the dialog scripts. First place to find VB.NET code. Next place to find VB.NET code. I step into one identity manager, Schema. Here we are. And if I open the Schema section, I see a lot of tables. Here, for example, Active Directory account. Everybody knows that. I open one of these Active Directory account fields, and you find here the definition of these object classes. On top, the Active Directory account object class. And if I look into this Active Directory account object class on the top table scripts, then you see a lot of VB.NET fields. Here are the scripts defined where you can develop specific behaviors for onloading and afterloading, on saving, and whatever else could happen to change objects during data actions like load, save, and insert. The next thing is that if I go one step down here in the list, I can talk about the columns, and everybody has seen that in the past. There is a specific task named value calculation, and on the tab value calculation you can find the templates. Remember, in Identity Manager it is possible to define a template for each column that exists. That means this template could generate data on the basis of other data in the system. For example, I can just calculate a display name born out of a first and a last name that already exists. These templates are VB code as well, and if I want to change them, then I have to do that here in the data schema section. We will have another video that will talk about templates as well. Together with the templates exist the format scripts. It's a VB.NET thing again. Here you can validate data to ensure that manual inserted data is valid and could be stored. Next thing where you can find VB.NET code, therefore I step to the permission section. Even in the permission section, you can create VB.NET code. For example, if I add a permission group to my system, there you find, for example, the preprocessor condition, and preprocessor condition could contain VB.NET code, and because of that, even if you insert system users and permission groups, sometimes it is necessary to compile the database. Next thing, process orchestration. You know the process orchestration, and you know as well the process editor. For example, if I open one of my processes here, which is a custom process, you can say that with help of the name because it starts with CCC. That looks like a pretty nice Visual editor, which it is, but behind the complete process, that means underneath of this specific editor, each of these processes is VB.NET code. So if I turn on the code view, you can see the process is nothing other else than auto-generated VB.NET code. You cannot change that in this specific window, but what you should know is that if you create processes or configure processes, then it is necessary to compile the database because underneath it is VB.NET code and it has to be compiled. The next thing where you can find VB.NET code is of course the script library, we saw it, but as well in the user interface section, which is our next main task here, we can find VB.NET code. Therefore, for example, I load the object definition. In the object definition itself, it's VB.NET code integrated as well. For example, if we look into that field named select script, a select script says this is in VB.NET the condition to determine this specific object definition. And because of that, for any object definition, I have as well to compile the database. Next part, as well in the user interface, if I step more to the button, there is the section user interface navigation. And if I, for example, load the user interface navigation for the manager, which is the manager dialog, and I step into that, for example, here into one of these filter definitions, then you can see again some VB fields. Here they are. And that means even if I change the user dialog and I store something into the database, I have to compile the database because I modified some VB scripts. Mail templates. Mail templates can contain scripts as well, especially if we start to work with dynamic data. That means I want to integrate into my email the name of the decision maker or something like that. And so it's clear that as well for mail templates, we need sometimes VB.NET Code. Documentation comes without VB.NET Code. And if we go into the base data section, we may find some more VB.NET Code snippets to compile. As you can see, VB.NET Code is something which is to find everywhere in the whole Identity Manager, and this is the reason why you should know something about the API.